Yes, people, welcome back to another episode of United State of Mind. It's a good day. Manchester United have finally broken their trophy drought. First trophy after 6 years, beating Newcastle in the League Cup final, the Carabao Cup final yesterday. But today I wanted to do a video, a little bit of a redemption video for man like Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Gonna break down his start at the club all the way through to right now and my opinions and thoughts on how he's been able to get to the other side under the Ten Hag reign. But before I do anything, people, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you're new, hit that notification bell, follow the socials down there below, and let's get into the video. Boy, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, man, I can't lie, I've been one of his harshest critics over the time. Like maybe not as far as maybe I can't lie. Maybe I said get him out of the club. I'm not sure if I was one of them people, but I didn't think he was good enough for the club. And obviously that comes from having some of the highest standards we've had for players at a club, and some players that have come in over the years. Not every single one of them, but some have come in and had to leave because they just weren't good enough. And maybe he was going to fall into that category for me. I mean, so let's chronicle it. From the beginning. Obviously, signed for £50 million in 2019 from Crystal Palace. It was a £45 million initial fee plus a £5 million performance related add-on. He actually made the move off the back of becoming the player of the year for Crystal Palace in the 2018-19 season, which is kind of remarkable for someone who comes out of their academy and goes straight into their first team and then becomes the player of the year, basically. And obviously there was a lot of like raving reviews. I do remember it at the time. Like obviously there was a lot of people talking about this young player in Aaron Wan-Bissaka. How great he was defensively, and obviously that must have coupled with the fact that at that point in time, Crystal Palace were playing very defensive style of football, so it kind of fit in to his kind of attributes as a player. And obviously he becomes one of the first signings in the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era, and obviously with that we had Harry Maguire, Dan James also came in as part of that. And there was the whole thing about United and their scouts assessing 804 right backs before finally setting on Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And that's crazy when you think about the kind of databases that some of these scouting teams and networks have across the world. 804 right backs, and that is the guy you settled on. And obviously there would have been some recommendations from some of their chief scouts at the time. And then obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would have had his ideals for what he wanted in a right back and what that right back would contribute to the team and the way they wanted to play. Now, when that information came out, there was a lot of fanfare on social media. Is this the guy that we picked out of 804 right back? Surely there was a better one. And it's like, okay, cool. I understand that to a certain extent, but it's pretty interesting that was the kind of process that kind of was undertaken before the actual target was emerged and we signed him. £50 million for me, it's a lot of money. I can't lie to you. Like, for somebody who's only had one season as a first team player, to invest that kind of money in the player, it's a lot. It is definitely a lot, but it is what it is. That is what the club have been doing over the last several years. Maybe overplaying on players. Maybe he was worth 25 million, and Palace decided, hey, we got to take advantage of this. This is someone that's come out of our academy. If you want to take him, you got to pay this money, and we eventually did. But in terms of my initial thoughts on the player, when we saw him, like we thought, okay, he's very good defensively. He had the ability to defend 1v1, great ability to defend 1v1, has the pace to recover in the tackle. And then obviously he has those long legs, so he's able to stretch in the last ditch challenges. And obviously that's how he was able to get the nickname Spider-Man. But then when I look at all of those attributes, obviously in terms of a modern day fullback, like I think the best of them are the ones that are able to balance the defense and attack. So, we've had like templates of that over the years before it became the norm. So when you look at like Ashley Cole is the best one for me, like where in terms of my time watching football, like he was the perfect balance of an attacking and defending fullback. So whenever he was ever, taken on 1v1, he always had the number of the opposing winger. And then at the same time, he was able to contribute going further forward. He was probably the best template for a modern day fullback that we see today. And then obviously at United, you obviously had Patrice Evra. He had that little spell of being one of the best or the best left back in the world, because he was able to, between the two boxes, able to showcase his ability defensively and offensively as well. So, that was the kind of templates. And obviously we've had some really great fullbacks over the years, the Roberto Carloses of the world, Maldini, when before he switched from left back into centre back and whatnot. And there's tons of others that really perform well over the years. But some of those people are the ones that I kind of look at as the template, as modern day fullback, in terms of the Patrice Evra and Ashley Cole. And when you look at Wan-Bissaka, despite the fact that his attacking side lacks a lot, at the time he comes in at United, he was, I believe, 22 years old. So 21 or 22 years old. Like, you think, okay, maybe he can develop that a little bit under the right level of coaching, manager or whatnot. But defensively, really good. And we saw that in certain performances. I mean, I believe one of his best performances would have been against the likes of Mbappe, like at the Parc des Princes in the Champions League. Like, he was able to lock him down, and he's been able to showcase that at different points during his Manchester United career. Now, when I look at the player in terms of like the profile and like his character and whatnot, he looks like he's a humble guy. Has good mental strength, works hard in the gym. As well, we saw like kind of videos of him doing that type of stuff off season. I'm sure a lot of people were, complaining at the fact that his attacking side is lacking. Why is he not on the pitch, doing drills and trying to improve on his attacking side of the game and whatnot? But it's like, you can't fault a player for trying to work hard when they're in the off season. Like, if he's working hard in the gym, doing strength and conditioning work, that's only going to help him in good stead for the rest of the season in other attributes as well, in other aspects of his game too. But I'm just going to go back to the fact that he made that move from Palace to Manchester United at such a young age. You have to kind of commend his family, the team around him. It was able to keep him grounded and keep him on a level head. Because I'll give you an example. When Will Zaha moved from Palace to Manchester United, different time, maybe different level of care when it came to players moving and making those big step ups to the bigger clubs. But he couldn't handle it. He even came out himself and said that he was homesick. He missed his family, he missed his friends when moving from London to Manchester. And it kind of fell apart for him very quickly, and he ended back up at Palace. And to a certain extent, we kind of saw that with Wan-Bissaka, but not to do with the kind of the social aspect or the outside aspect. Then on the field, there were the rumors at the start of the year that he was going to go back to Palace on loan in the January window and whatnot. But testament to, like, he has a good team and good family and a strong unit around him that has kind of allowed him to make this transition from the club that he was at to one of the biggest clubs in the world. And he just seems like he understands that he's there to do a job, and he does it very well in terms of the defensive side of the game. But ultimately, he looked like he was going to be a casualty under the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer reign, because, we look at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's reign, not a successful period for the club. There was a lot of talk about, kind of a reset, a cultural reset with certain players of a certain nationality. So remember, they were talking about, having a British core and this, that, and the other. And obviously that poor reign is also is kind of coupled with the fact that, Harry Maguire comes in there, Dan James comes in there. Wan-Bissaka is also a big piece of that. Harry Maguire was also overpaid for. He's now no longer the captain. He's the de facto captain because he's the club captain, but he doesn't even start games for the club anymore. Dan James was sold, and Wan-Bissaka came from that window. And so, people will look at him as a bit of a scapegoat for the reason why we didn't perform as well during that period. And I'll give you an example of something kind of similar. So you remember when Marouane Fellaini was signed by David Moyes at the last point in the January window of 2014, I think it was 13. Yeah, the summer of 2013. A lot of people were scapegoating him. I mean, first there was a bit of anger surrounding the transfer because we waited until the end of the window to get him. We actually paid maybe 5 million more than the actual release clause that he had at that particular point in time. And he was the only signing in the window. A lot of people were like, that's not a Manchester United player. And then obviously Moyes has a terrible season, and he is kind of made a scapegoat because of the fact that he was the only signing during that reign. Obviously, when I came in the January window, but at that point it was pretty much, curtains were down for him, David Moyes anyway. Then he moves into the LVG reign, and he had some important kind of contributions. I believe scoring in a semi-final against Everton in the FA Cup. That was the only trophy we won that season. And then having certain contributions in games and whatnot. you can't fault the player. The player really wanted to play for the club. He was happy. That was the pinnacle of his career, that he ever was even able to reach that point. And then did what he needed to do. Then on the other side, you've got then the Mourinho era, and under the Mourinho era, he was really prominent as a player. Like, you saw him getting game winners. I think there was a game winner against, who was the team that we played in the Champions League? It's a Swiss team, the Young Boys. There was the home game against Young Boys where he scored a crucial winner in the Champions League. Then I remember him scoring in, I believe, the Europa League semi-final against Celta Vigo, on our way to winning that trophy in 2017. He had some important contributions. I believe he scored in the semi-final of the League Cup against Hull. I believe either in the home or the away leg. I'm not too sure. Someone can remind me in the comments with that one. But he was very important under that era. And to be honest with you, if you kind of look with hindsight, he actually was an important contributor to the side in certain games and decided certain games. And his reign at the club in his 5 years was actually pretty good. Now, you look at Wan-Bissaka, he's coming under a certain manager, the reign of that manager that's fallen apart, the guy gets sacked. At that point, you're looked at as a scapegoat within the club. And then obviously, Ten Hag comes in this at the start of the season. He looks surplus to requirements at the start of Ten Hag's reign, and basically is put on the transfer list and is available for transfer. Nobody came because I feel like the club's valuation of him was maybe a bit too much. But like, fair play to Wan-Bissaka, man. Like, in the offseason, once again, showcasing that he is trying to work hard. He's trying to do something. He was doing drills in the park. And I ain't going to lie, when I saw that video at the time, I'm like, I see a man wearing a cap. I was like, bro, you're not serious, man. And I was like, hey, get ready to learn Chinese, buddy, because, hey, you're not going to stay at this club. But look, at the end of the day, whatever he was doing in that park, doing those drills with whoever he was doing them with, it's kind of stood him in good stead. It's at least showing that he wants to work hard, at least. And that's what I'm saying. That's where the good mentality part comes in, where he's humble, he's got good mental strength. He just wants to work hard. And that's what he was doing in the park. I mean, it's unconventional, but it must have worked. And I think seeing himself out of the side, at points during the season as well, Malacia had to fill in that right back. When Dalot was injured or taken off or was out of the games, for example. And so even with that, that's writing on the wall. You're seeing Lindelof at certain points during the season as well. He was in the right back position. You're like, the writing's on the wall. But then after the World Cup, I'm sure that there was a few preseason games where, I say preseason, but a few games during the middle of the season whilst the World Cup was on, where United had some games, and there was, I think there was even, talk about how he was a little bit off the pace in one of the friendly games and whatnot. But Dalot comes back to United from the World Cup injured, and he was able to get his chance, Wan-Bissaka, in the side. And from that point, he's really performed well. He's kicked on. He's not taken that bit of adversity or that disappointment that he may have in himself and his time at the club personally. He's understood that the manager wants more from his fullback, and he needs to be able to showcase that on the pitch in order to continue to keep his place. And testament to the management of Ten Hag, because he's always left that door open. Just because I leave you out doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to get back in. As long as you follow the instructions that I have laid out for you and you do them well, you always have a chance back in my side. And that's basically what's happened here. I mean, the competition between him and Dalot has also been very key, because we need competitiveness in a squad that's chasing major honors. But then, look, I'm just going to say, look, shout out to Wan-Bissaka, man. He's behaved like a true model professional. He's never sulked. He hasn't started leaking things to the press. He just literally gotten on with his job. He's a bit of a killer. To be honest with you, he's so obsessed with just winning the ball back, defending well, and he does it really well. If we're being honest, he's probably one of the best 1v1 defenders in the world, because he's taken on some of the world's best. You look at that performance yesterday against Alan Saint-Maximin. That's a tricky character. We talk about the epitome of jinky majinky football. That is Alan Saint-Maximin, right? And Wan-Bissaka just easily clamped him, locked him down, put him in his pocket, as everybody likes to say, and just got on with the game. And it's to be honest with you, he had a shout for a bit of man of the match. It's only a half, and I know Casemiro had a really good game across the 90. So, he had a shout. I mean, But look, at this point, he's 25 years old. He has to kick on at this point to try and claim that starting position at right back. Obviously, Dallow's a couple years younger than him at 23. Still has some deficiencies to his game too. But it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to be in terms of the long-term solution at right back for the club, because there may be better out there in terms of the balance that I mentioned before, because that's where he has some deficiencies in terms of him going forward and being able to contribute to the attack like the modern day fullback template that we come to see now as the norm. So whether he actually gets to that point and reaches those heights, we have to wait and see. But look, shout out to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, man. He's really come back from the adversity that he faced at the start of the season, and capping it off with a really, really good performance, good 45 minutes against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. What more can you say, man? And it's keeping us in this short to medium term period with that right back position, with very highly competitive between him and Dalot. It's gonna mean that we're gonna do pretty well in that position for at least a few more years before we have to actually make a certified decision on what we need to do with that position anyway. But yeah, man, look, let me know your thoughts on Aaron Wan-Bissaka's kind of time at the club, his kind of redemption that he's been able to kind of create this season. And whether you think he's going to be able to kick on and be the starting right back for the team moving forward. But look, leave those in the comments and let me know what you think. I'm going to be signing out right now. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you're new. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with all your friends and all of that. Hit the socials down below. And I'm out, people. Peace.